What is up, folks? John here. Talking. It is the day after Halloween, also known as November 1st, but some people may, in fact, be looking at this during Halloween, so let's keep the spirit alive and say Happy Halloween, folks. This is not going to be very spooky, and this is not going to be very creepy or kooky, or altogether ooky, or anything to do with the Addams Family. Watched that yesterday with a friend of mine, and friends of mine. And it was quite fun. Hold on, I'm gonna do a little magic here. This way people might actually see this. Thing is, my keyboard thinks it's one thing and it's actually another, so thinks it's a little contradictory in terms. So kind of fun. Some people who had watched our stream before, me stream on here before, when we did the 100 kata challenge, could not see this, but could hear it. And then when we did something on Tuesday, they could not hear it, but could see it. So hopefully now we can do both. Both have audio and visual. Yeah. What do you guys think? Does this stretch out shirt or not? My mom keeps saying, hey, you have all these stretched out shirts at the neck. Somebody's got to buy you some new shirts. So that was fun. Just got off the phone with her. So a little more chat, more than anything else. You guys can see my wonderful stairway to heaven. That's what this will be known as, purely. But today, what I want to talk to you about is something that's been on my mind, and especially in terms of making stuff and relaying experience, because what we do on here, what we do on this thing called the internet, what we do on this thing called Twitch or YouTube or Twitter or whatever, is just relay our experiences. We talk about our experiences, what we've experienced, in a filtered way, through our own filters, through our own backgrounds, through our own language, through whatever we see or take in. And in doing so, we in turn create an image of the world around us. Well, whether that's a good image, it's a bad image, it's an okay image, whatever it is just what we are creating. Putting up on the Facebook, putting up on Twitter, putting up wherever or however. The internet allows us to create this image. Now, where am I going with this? Because this is specifically about people who look like me, or people who might not be from where I live, that are being Japan, talking about Japan, or talking about any country that you're not from, but living in it, and trying to explain or relay your experiences of a culture you are not born into, or a country you are not born into, or a culture that you are not related to directly, to your own culture, to your own language. And I wanted to get into this a little bit. So one thing I'm always concerned about when talking about this, and when I was in my early 20s, or my mid-20s, mid-early, late 20s, kind of covered the whole space, is I was effectively trying to do that. I was trying to relay my experiences of this, oh wow, this new place, this place a lot of people I know haven't been to. Oh wow, look at this, look at that, look at this. Trying to show off where I've been. And some people had thought this was, oh wow, this wonderful place. Oh, he's living it up. And some people had thought, oh well, he's, just that Japan guy now or whatever. And I think that's one thing I want to talk about a little bit, because this is what people do. They relate their experiences from where they are, and they relate them in a familiar setting and a familiar language. If I jvlog about my experiences in a Japanese convenience store, which are quite different than my experiences in an American convenience store, one of which I worked at, one of which I've been to many a time, as opposed to talking about my job or my day-to-day life or whatever. So we're still doing effectively the quote-unquote Marco Poloing, where we've found this new land and we've made it, trying to make it accessible to all. And what I think a lot of the time is people who are in my position, who come from one place and then go live in another, and then try to relay their experiences. They tend to come off as, "Oh, I found this new thing," when in fact it's been there the entire time. It's that people talk about this extemporaneously in other places, but to them, their experience is completely new. Now, this is a good thing. This is a bad thing. Kind of goes in the adult diapers category of it depends, right? I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to talk about your experiences and to talk about something that's new or weird or odd or different for you. That's not a bad thing. What is important, though, to understand when creating something like this is to know, is to have a little more self awareness of, well, I'm not the only person who's done this. I'm not the only person who has gone from country A and then gone to country B and experiences differences and changes and things like that. It's important to have that self-realization, that self-consciousness. This doesn't mean you can't create things, and it doesn't mean you shouldn't make things. Most human history is based on continuing to do the same thing over and over and over again, mainly because we are creatures of habit, but we are also creatures of familiarity. It's easy for us to listen to someone talk about something like this, or talk about something new or something different, and relay that, rather than talk about or do something in a completely different way. Like if I started doing some sort of odd interpretive dance for you, which I know nothing of and will never most likely happen. This would seem odd and outside the spectrum, and this would be something you wouldn't uh, you wouldn't want to hear or see. So I would say it's not bad, but it's important to have self-awareness. It's important to not just consistently advertise, "Oh, I'm in a new place and I'm in a new setting," da 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 da. Because this is also people's homes. This is where they're from. And it's important to understand that if you do this in somewhere that's someone else's home, how would you feel if someone went to your hometown or went to where you're from and did that there? And I feel Japan, in very particular, tends to have this issue where, because there is a stronger feel of cultural hegemony here, is that if there's anybody from the outside coming in from any other country, despite the fact this has been happening for years and years and years and years and years, there's kind of a sense of, oh, it's a new person. Oh no, that's just to say, people will always be that way, or people always think that, or act that way. But there's a general cultural tendency to have that reaction here. And then there's also the tendency for people who come here to Japan to have the, well, I'm new here and I'm the first person they've ever met who is, looks like me. But in fact, most likely that is not true. And this is something I've been trying in my interactions with people as of late and before, to kind of break down, just to be the normal person who lives here, just to normalize who I am to people, to be as friendly and as open and honest with people without losing who I am, but at the same time adapt to a new situation. I think everyone does this, even if you are in the same country of origin or same language of origin. And anyone does this. I feel when people jvlog or they talk about Japan or talk about their experiences in Japan, I'm using my hands because I'm kind of Italian like that. Only a quarter. But I have a quarter in my other pocket too, but I only have a couple pockets right now. When people do this, when they create these sort of things, it is important to keep aware of the people you're talking about and the people around you. That it is not just a setting for you to create, or it's not just a background for you to work off against. That people live here, people work here, people are from here, and they aren't just characters for you to interact with. They're people in your life. They're people in who you integrate with, and they're people who you work with, who you do business with, who you do the whole spectrum of whatever you do in your life with. And I'm not calling out anybody either. I'm not saying there's any sort of particular person who acts like, well, Japan's this way, da 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 da. But there is a tendency for people to act that way. There's a tendency for people to make videos like this. Not like this, obviously. There's a lot more handsome people with better hair than myself who make videos. You guys notice that there's probably too much nose hair going on right now. But I wanted to make this vlog or do this kind of stream about just talking about creating content around being a foreigner in Japan. Now, it is also somewhat scary to talk about this to a degree because I'm employed in Japan, and there are people who are possibly employed on there. They would view this and say, he's talking about blah, blah, blah. Sorry, HIPAA rules. I don't talk about my employment. I don't talk about my business, Kay. I don't talk about, very Michael Corleone. Never asking me about my business. Even though, I've said about very publicly, I teach English. So that's why a lot of foreigners who come to this country do is they end up just teaching English. Or they teach a foreign language, or they teach the language where they come from. I haven't really run into anybody who is teaching any other language, I think. But I know it exists. I know it's out there. I know people who, the island down from me in Okinawa, they've got some Chinese lessons going on there. And I know a friend of mine has taught Latin to some Japanese kids, so that's interesting. But I wanted to put this out there, which is talking about Japan before I delve into anything about Japan in specific, because I am very, very self-conscious of creating something, because I know possibly at some point friends of mine who are Japanese or friends of mine who have had the same experiences I've had will look at this and possibly say, well, he doesn't have the right to say that, or oh, I lived the same experience, or I had the same thing he had, and what right does he have to talk about blah blah blah? Not that I'm all that concerned about that, because I have the right to make as much whatever I want, and they do. But I am aware of my situation of being a quote unquote a foreigner in Japan. And we'll talk about that another time. But also the kind of implications of bringing assumptions to a culture, or bringing assumptions to an opinion about something. I'm very aware that I was a northeastern American guy now living in southern Japan, and how in a lot of maybe artificial ways or superficial ways there are night and day cultural differences. In some very real ways, there's differences as well. But I also think I actually see a lot of where I come from in a lot of the people that I interact with and work with and live with and live around. So I will take this time to talk about how one thing is work culture, and it's something I've been thinking about and reading about. And some people talk about overwork and death by overwork. I think this is possibly a chart thing. This is possibly a numbers thing. I don't have any particular research in front of me. I'm just kind of going off anecdotal from what I've experienced. Is that people will work here much, much, much longer and much, much harder than where I come from, which is the United States of America. But there's also a very different feel. Now, I've lived in a lot of very rural places, so buildings can just remain open for a long, long time. There's no, generally people will just leave stuff open, or they'll lock up, but it's not that hard to just stay in a building for a while, leave a light on, and someone to keep working. Now, regardless of whether or not that work is really, really important or not, work comes when it comes. And people are expected to just do the work that they have. Office work, whatever. That work is going to pile up eventually. And there's some redundancies that, believe it or not, the pandemic is somewhat solving with stamping stuff and moving literal paperwork around. But the majority of the time, people will work to completion. They will try to get things done here. Now, is there social pressure to stay at work longer and longer to get more and more done, to look like you're trying to be in a better place with people? Yeah. And guess what? There's plenty of people who do that in America too. The office culture in the United States, the iron bowl, as some people put it here, the work until you work for 30 years, then retire with a pension type job, is shrinking here just as much as it is in the United States. I feel it has shrunk much, much, much faster in the United States, and those things are much, 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 much. There's a lot less to opportunity to get that than here. Where here, the gig culture has not overtaken things. The dispatch worker thing, the issues that the over contracted workers, independent contractors and stuff like that, has not overtaken the economy the way it has in the United States. There is still the room for the salaryman here, but it is shrinking as well. The slower pace, but still is. So I would say that there's also a tendency here for things to not change. People not wanting things to change. If people think that the idea of working for the company, being a company man, is still very much in people's blood here. People want to do that and be part of the company, and they'll make the sacrifices necessary. I feel that's the same thing in America too. But there is a stronger sense of self-interest in terms of personal freedom to do that. As opposed to here, it's self-interest to maintain what you have, so you maintain respectability. Which is, I think, it comes from the same place, but it plays out in two different ways. In the States, people will tend to want to have that personal freedom, that personal time and whatever. And say, I'm not working until late. I had a coworker once say to me, why we don't go out and parties, because I already spend 40 hours a week with y'all, and I don't need to spend any more. Japan, you're going to end up working overtime anyway, so you might as well go and have a beer or go party out with people you work with. But you literally work out your frustrations this way at work. And I think in some ways that clears the air or makes things easier to deal with in the work environment, rather than letting them, working 8 hours, having possible issues with coworkers or whatever, or with your boss, and then that bubbles over into weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, which people can end up getting fired from. So, in a weird social way, this consistent long stretch of work and the problem with unpaid overtime in Japan, from a social level, makes things a little easier to a degree than how that work culture plays out in America. So that's just kind of one idea that I wanted to throw out there doing this vlog. But yeah, what we're going to be talking about the differences between, I don't want to say Western countries, because I would say Japan is just as quote-unquote Western as England or Germany or any other developed country. But we're going to talk about some of these differences in future vlogs or jvlogs or however you want to talk about this. Somebody's walking out the door. But that'll be it for now. And I just wanted to talk about jvlogging and kind of do a little meta commentary before I did some commentary. Okay, cool beans. All right, I will see you guys later.